Spring in Don't Starve Together can definitely be a pain in the ass, but at the end of the day, your biggest problem is staying dry, and if you can figure that out, you can actually have a fairly nice time of it. When it comes to summer, however, all your plants wither and die, sinkholes form around you to break all your things, the world literally catches on fire randomly, and you have to deal with all of that while it's like 1,000,000,000 degrees and the game looks more yellow than that Coldplay song. But don't worry guys, I'm here to help you overcome all these problems and make it through to the autumn again. And I'll try to tackle the threats in the order that you'll most likely experience them in the game. So we'll start with the heat itself, which you may even begin to notice a few days before summer officially kicks off. There are quite a few ways to stay cool in this season, and I think the simplest is still with a good old thermal stone. I would recommend making a few of these and keeping a spare in the icebox for easy switching when the one you're holding gets too hot. I used to use endothermic fire pits a lot to cool off and cool down the thermal stone, and while this is still a valid option, iceboxes are just so much cheaper and more effective. They don't need to be refueled, and like I said, as long as you have a spare in there, you can switch between them in an instant and carry on with whatever you're doing. When you're not around your base, things can be a little trickier. I mean, it's not like your fridge can follow you around, right? Well, turns out it actually can, kind of. If you have 9 blue gems, you can transform Chester on a full moon into a snow variant that acts exactly like an icebox. Keep a spare thermal stone in there and you're good to go. If you don't want to take Chester around, or maybe he's a bit preoccupied, having an endothermic fire prototyped at all times is still a good idea. You can also carry some niter around with you to make extras if you're planning on being away for extended periods of time. And as we all know by now, Don't Starve Together is nothing if not a game with plenty of options. And there are plenty of items and foods that provide direct cooling or protection from overheating. I personally like to use Mooncaller staves, which you can get from completing the Moonstone event on a full moon, as well as an umbrella if I'm starting to get warm, but I'm still a bit of a distance away from home. Luxury fans are also pretty good to use in summer in combination with clothing like an umbrella, as it instantly reduces your temperature by a considerable amount, and the umbrella will keep you cool for longer. The fan also has the added bonus of being able to put out nearby fires, which, as we will see, can be quite handy in summer. If you manage to catch them in winter, ice breams can keep you cool in summer by simply holding them in your inventory. They spoil after a day, but you can always return them to a tin fishing bin to allow them to recover and switch out for a fresh one, kind of like a living thermal stone. As far as foods go, Wiley's exclusive asparagus gazpacho dish is the best by far and will keep you cool for a whole 5 minutes, or roughly 60% of a day. So if you want, you can eat 1 or 2 a day and be perfectly room temperature throughout the whole summer. If you get really stuck without any kind of relief from the heat and you're too far from home, large trees can offer a bit of protection in a pinch, and if you make it until the night time, you can hurry home in the evening while it's a bit cooler. Ducking down into the caves will also shelter you from the heat for as long as you're down there. In fact, I normally use summer as my designated caves and ruins time because I don't have to worry about many of the summer threats down there, and rain is also quite rare in the caves in summer, which makes things like ruins clearing a bit more peaceful. And if heat was the only thing you had to deal with in summer, it would be a pretty breezy season, but unfortunately that's not the case here. Along with the scorching temperature, there is a chance that objects on screen will spontaneously catch fire. This includes trees, crops, your own items, and buildings. Wildfires are probably my least favorite mechanic in the game. It's actually the only world gen option I disable, but for the purposes of this video, I will show you how you can deal with them. For obvious reasons, you probably don't want to be running around putting out fires as they start. It's much better to have automatic defenses that take care of smoldering objects before they catch fire, and for that you'll need ice flingamatics. When you build them, you can see they show a circular range, and everything within that area will be protected while the flingamatic has fuel and is turned on. A fully fueled flinger will last around 5 days, meaning you'll need to refuel it at least 3 times over the course of the summer. And it's not exactly cheap to refuel either. A full tank requires around 10 logs worth of fuel, and if you have multiple flingers around the place, you can see how this quickly becomes quite an expense. There are other items you can use instead of logs like niter or glommer's goop, which are a bit more efficient, but the process is still a pain and it requires you remembering to refuel them as well. And the punishment for forgetting is that your base burns down. So instead of dealing with this, a lot of players opt to either stay in the caves and ruins during the summer or build their bases in the Oasis desert. During this season, the Oasis desert has a constant sandstorm running through it, which is terrible for visibility, but has the neat bonus of preventing wildfires completely. This is the only biome on the surface that does not have wildfires. But if you do decide to make the Oasis desert your home, you will need a way to move through the sandstorm freely, and for that you will need to do some fishing. In the Oasis desert, you should come across an actual oasis, which is only active during the summer. If you fish in the little lake there, before too long you should be able to find the blueprint for the desert goggles. These last 10 days and allow you to see and travel through the sandstorm unimpeded. And while you're running around in the desert, you may also notice that summer is the time when the cactuses bloom, producing cactus flowers as well. Cooked cactus flesh can be used for sanity, and flower salad can be made for health or for giving to Pearl as one of her quests. And it's a good thing that these plants grow in summer because many others do not. In fact, unless you have a flingo nearby, you'll find that grass, twigs, berries, stone fruit, all of those will wither in the summer sun and won't produce anything. Thankfully, you can still grow crops in farm plots just fine, they just might need a bit of extra watering. More than half of the farm crops actually favour summer as a time to grow as well, so it's not actually the worst time for farming. Also found in the Oasis desert is the incredibly annoying boss, Antlion. And unlike some of the other seasonal bosses, Antlion cannot be ignored. In fact, they will do their absolute best to constantly remind you that they exist. See, they get hungry, and when they get hungry, they get a bit angry. This at least is something I can understand and relate to. However, they take their anger out on the player by opening up sinkholes under your feet or dropping boulders on your head. And in order to stop this from happening all throughout the summer, you need to either feed them consistently or kill them. If you want to go with the pacifist route, you probably should get yourself some goggles first, since you'll need to make at least 2 food runs during the summer. Antlion's diet consists of rocks and trinkets, with rocks probably being the simplest item to donate. You'll need to feed it roughly 20 rocks every 6 days in order to keep it content. Obviously, if you donate less, you will need to return sooner. And unless you happen to walk past Antlion often, there is no real warning that it's getting hungry like you might see when another boss or hounds are approaching. So again, you will need to remember to come back on your own if you want to avoid the consequences. The sinkholes that Antlion creates are not exactly difficult to dodge, so it's unlikely that they will pose a significant mortal threat to you unless you're not paying attention, but they break almost everything on top of them and force you to tiptoe over them very slowly. They also just look really ugly, especially if they're in your base, and take a total of 30 days to completely disappear with no way to repair them manually. I personally choose to kill Antlion quite early in summer the vast majority of the time and just bypass all of this drama, but the fight is definitely not a piece of cake, even for someone with over 2,000 hours of experience. In order to begin the fight, you have to give Antlion a very cold or very hot thermal stone. They will then create a circle of sandcastles around them, locking you into a very tight area before attempting to hit you with sand spikes from beneath. You have a small window to react to these spikes before they hit, and hit quite hard, so I would definitely recommend bringing some armor with you for the fight. I normally try to dodge by going around in a circle. That seems to work the best for me. It's also worth knowing that the attacks come at you quicker as Antlion gets lower in health, so if you're struggling to get hits in between dodging, that means you're pretty close to the end. If you try to leave the arena, Antlion can start chomping some rocks to regain their health, so as hard as it is, if you need to heal up or make extra items mid-fight, I would recommend waiting for a window where Antlion is remaking the sandcastles to do so. If you play as Wirt, using Merms for this fight really takes all of the stress out of it. You often don't need to engage Antlion at all. Other minions like pigs or spiders either don't have as much health or deal as much damage as Merms, so would be less useful but still could lend a hand in a pinch. Abigail is also quite handy if you play as Wendy, and if you manage to kill Antlion, you'll receive the blueprints for the Lazy Deserter, which is a teleportation device that requires 2 people to use, and the new Turf Razor Helm, which is an automatic pitchfork hat and is an absolute godsend if you plan on doing a lot of base building or terraforming or both. If you want to get these items without killing Antlion, you can still do so by giving Antlion a beach toy trinket. These can be found by fishing in the Oasis lake, and it's also a good way of getting multiple blueprints if you're playing with other people. By the time you get to summer, you're most likely already familiar with the periodic waves of hounds and the threat they pose. However, in this season and the following autumn, red hounds are added to the mix. They have a bit less health than the regular hounds, much as the blue hounds, but they burst into flames when they die, making it a terrible idea to fight them anywhere near your base. On top of this, you may start to see more varglets among the hounds as the days advance. These are essentially buff hounds that can summon 3 backup hounds as you fight them. If you have tooth traps or a beefalo herd or any other kind of designated hound trap that you've been using to fight them up till this point, they will still work well enough for summer hound waves, but if not, you really should. And if you really can't be bothered dealing with the heat, Antlion or wildfires, there is one other method for putting them on pause. You can make it rain. Every time you use a telelocator staff, it increases the wetness of the world a little bit. So if you use it enough times to generate rain, all of those summer problems will go away until the rain stops. Unfortunately, with summer being the hottest season, it will probably take a few uses and maybe even multiple staves to start the rain, and it might not last very long, but hey, if you're really lazy, it's a valid option. Sometimes I even do this if I can't be bothered watering my plants, so it's valid, okay? And if you feel like going a bit out of your way to the waterlogged biome, the shade provided by giant trees not only keeps you cool, but also completely mitigates wildfires as well. Again, I probably wouldn't recommend this as a strategy for your first summer since it's quite the hassle to go and come back and then grow the tree itself, which takes like 15 days, but it's an option nonetheless. You also get to dodge Antlion's sinkholes and hound waves while you're out on the water. You still have to deal with wildfires for some reason, but a flingo or fire pump will take care of your boat with little issue if you feel like sailing around the seas and catching fish for a season. And with that, we've covered all the threats summer has in store for you. If you make it through that, you get to enjoy the peace and serenity that comes with autumn of year 2. I hope you found this video helpful. If you've been struggling with summer, if you do have any additional questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.